everybody, welcome back to my planty channel. If you are new here, my name is Grace. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make my DIY soil mix. It is a very basic and affordable option. If you're a beginner at houseplants, honestly, I really recommend it. It is the soil mix that I have pretty much every single one of my plants potted in, and they're doing fine. I've been using this mix for many years. I don't even know how many years at this point. Like I said, it's going to be a very basic mix. There's not going to be any like fancy amendments to it, but that also keeps it on the cheaper side, which is the reason why I use it, is because I can't really afford all of those amendments going into soil. This is my current bag of soil. I'm going to mix just a little bit up so I can top it off a bit. All of these amendments are going to be super easy to find. Most likely your local grocery store will have them. Mine does. I typically get them all from Ace. You can find them pretty much anywhere. Lowe's, Home Depot. Yeah, it's like a very basic brand, very easy to find. I'm gonna try to show you the bags that I use without it being too loud because they're very crinkly plastic bags. This is the base of the soil mix. It is cactus and succulent potting mix. I highly recommend that you do not just use this, because it is very peat heavy, and for a cactus and succulent mix, or I guess it doesn't say cactus and succulent, cactus, palm, and citrus mix, but for a cactus mix, it does not have very fast draining qualities. It has a lot of peat in it. When I very first started using this, it said cactus and succulent mix on the bag, and it was very draining. I could literally just use the bag straight off. I didn't have to add anything to it. It had a lot of perlite, had a lot of wood chunks in it, and it was perfect. And then I think they must have changed up their formula. I'm not sure. This was years ago, but if I am potting up one of my aeroids, I can add a lot of perlite to the mix. I can add a lot of bark chunks and really make that mix airy. We're also going to be using perlite. Honestly, I don't think it really matters what brand. The Miracle-Gro brand is very small, very tiny pieces of perlite, and beware that this is very dusty. Dry perlite is extremely dusty, so I would recommend just like scooping it out instead of pouring it out of the bag, because the dust is gonna go straight in your lungs and it's not gonna be fun. If I can find a chunkier perlite that is generally as affordable as this one is, I would switch to that, but this one works for what it is. And lastly is some orchid bark. I wish that I had like pine bark. It is like square little bark chunks. With this one, you will have to break them up by hand because a lot of the pieces in here are quite large. But for me, I don't mind doing that. So it works fine for me. But if I could get my hands on some pine bark soon, I think I would be pretty interested in adding that to my mix, maybe in place of this, or even to just add it as an extra amendment to make it even more airy and well draining. So yeah, like I said, I'm only going to mix up just a tiny bit to top this off, so I'm not going to be making a ton, but just enough that you can get a good idea of what I'm doing. I don't ever measure it out. I just go by the feel and the look of it. I go by how it looks and how it feels. So hopefully with me mixing it the way that I like and you can get a good visual of it, hopefully that's enough that you can kind of feel like you're confident enough in recreating that look. Just add a little bit of this, add a little bit of that until it looks right. It's kind of like those old recipes that aren't an actual recipe. Just like add a little bit of this and a little bit of that until it looks right. And somehow it always turns out right. So without further ado, I'm gonna scoot you back and angle you down towards my potting mat, and let's mix up some soil. I'm gonna try to actually measure it out for you and see if that can help, if I can kind of actually make a recipe as I go. So I'm gonna do 1 scoop of soil. Let's just start with a scoop of the orchid bark. And let's see how 1 scoop looks. Okay, so that is equal parts of everything so far. Okay, so 1 scoop is a little more perlite heavy than I prefer. That would dry out very fast right there. This mix is what I would use for a cactus or a succulent. Sometimes in these orchid bark bags, you'll get a very large chunk of wood. So I'm going to add an extra scoop of bark. I think I'm actually going to do 2 more scoops of bark. I very much prefer my mixes to be more bark heavy, more chunky than perlite heavy. That is looking very nice. I think that looks very good. Still, 1 scoop was a little heavier on the perlite than I normally do, which is interesting because normally I feel like I'm just dumping the perlite to it, adding so much. Let's see what. Let's do a 1/2 scoop just to try to even out that perlite. I would say that is pretty good. I do love a very chunky mix. Let's compare it to the mix that I already have. This perlite, by the way, is recycled perlite. It is reused. It had been used in water propagation, so that's why it's not as bright. It was very very covered in algae, so it's a little dingy looking. But if this soil mix were dry like this is completely dry. This is quite a bit, there's quite a bit of moisture in that. They would be pretty darn similar, I would say. So I think I did pretty good. I tried really hard to keep this at a minimum. Hopefully I didn't make too much. Oh no. Wow, that is a solid full bag of soil right there. I'm just gonna add this little bit back into my soil bag. And that is it. It is easy as that. Just 3 steps. And I think I said before, but I want to kind of just reiterate, this is not the best soil mix option out there. I am not saying that this soil is better than the rest. I definitely have had some issues in the past with this specific brand of soil. I have had trouble in the past with there being fungus gnat larvae in the soil. However, it just is the only one that I can afford. And the only one that I am personally comfortable using. It's the only soil I have ever used, so it was very unfortunate that one time that I did get a little bit of a gnat infestation from my soil. So, you know, it isn't the best, most bougie brand or option that you can possibly use, but it is affordable and it does work. Like I said, all of my plants are potted up in some version of this mix. Sometimes I make it more perlite heavy depending on the plant, sometimes I don't. I really just tailor it to each plant, and honestly, they're all doing well in it. If I ever notice that maybe they seem to be staying wet a little bit longer, I will go in and add some perlite to that mix and make it to where they dry out a little bit faster, and they do fine. You kind of just have to play with it and listen to what your plants are telling you. And if they're drying out a little bit too fast, if you're having to water them multiple times a week, it's probably a little bit too perlite heavy. And if they are still really wet by the end of the week, it is probably a little too peat heavy. You might want to add some more bark, you might want to add a bit more perlite. But honestly, in doing this, it has really helped me grow my green thumb over the years. It really helps you become more attuned to the plant when you are really paying attention to how they react to the soil. Hopefully in the future I can expand my soil budget and be able to buy some really nice amendments. I would love to add pine bark, I would love to add charcoal, I would love to add leca even to make it even more airy, especially for my aeroids. But for now, it works. It has been working for years, so I feel confident enough in sharing just this very basic soil mix for beginners who I'm sure most of you have the same plant budget as I do. I will say that I just bought this bag of soil about 2 weeks ago, and I could tell that it had been sitting on the shelf for probably like the entire winter. When I opened it, the soil was bone dry, like bone dry, which is perfect because I know that fungus gnat larva is not going to be able to survive in bone dry soil. So I'm very confident in knowing that this bag of soil specifically is not going to give me fungus gnats. Fingers crossed. I don't see how any gnat larva could survive. But in the spring and the summer, probably even the fall, when you start buying this up, I would say as they start packaging it at a more rapid rate, the soil is very damp in the bag. It is always very damp, which is the perfect housing for fungus gnats to survive in. So I would recommend, like, right now maybe trying to find a bag of very dry Miracle-Gro, because it is going to be your best shot at not having that potential for fungus gnats. If you do though, they honestly are pretty easy to get rid of if you are very consistent with using mosquito bits in your soil every time you water. Honestly, sometimes my plant budget is so low I even struggle having to buy these, but it is quite literally the cheapest option that I have found. I guess that is it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, or even if you have recommendations for options that you prefer that I don't know about, I would love to hear about them, because I am very much willing to try a new soil. If you have an option for a chunkier perlite that's very affordable, please tell me about it. If this video was helpful for you, please leave a like and consider subscribing. I post planty videos every Friday, and if you want more plant content in the meantime, you can follow my Instagram at _Grace's Garden. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!